Zelda, is it? Yeah. Almost get confused. Sun-sa-da-dan. Hola community, welcome everybody to another episode of Blender.Today live, streaming live from Amsterdam. I just made a poll before even starting. I just made a poll in the chat asking everyone about when is the best time to ask the questions. You know, every week we get together, we see what's new in Blender, but also we try to stay in touch with the community, like to hang out, to chat about maybe when is the feature happening, or why is this happening, or whatever happened with anything in life. That is the question of the poll. I know it's a bit biased because I'm doing it in the live stream, but the question is basically to decide when is the best time to ask the questions, either on the same day, on the thread live as you're watching the stream, so you get more recent questions, or a week ahead, like today for next week. I think it's a mix. It could be a mix because the advantage of having it on the same day is that they are all pretty recent. Every question should be related to what is happening now, and Blender developments go so fast that maybe it is a way to have more fresh questions. Otherwise, it would be done on like today for next week, and then during the week. The advantage of that is that during the week, the community could help me answer those questions that I don't really have an answer to sometimes. Either because I'm not in that area, I'm so involved in that area, or in general, just because other people know better the answer on like add-ons or development on branches that I don't really follow that much. I follow mainly what's happening on Blender Master and a few branches, such as Cycles X. We have some news today. Regarding development itself, if you check out the description of this video, you have the links to all that I'm gonna talk about today. And it's really not that much. It's been a busy week. The last week was the last one of the Google Summer of Code, and there are some new some articles coming to the Code blog where there's even a new person in the team to start covering that. I'm not gonna spoil anything. You probably know this person already, but you're gonna see new blog posts there soon, hopefully. And there are actually blog posts already in that blog. The one from last week, it's one that hits really close because we talk about it about this topic every week, and it starts with the attributes and fields. This whole concept that it's a rethink of the way Blender geometry nodes behave at the moment. It's a big change. However, this is not like a project that's just happened and now is like, oh, changing how geometry nodes work out of nowhere. There has been a few prototypes, and this has been discussed in the community at length, not only in like the chat, the modules, but also at the studio and with developers coming to the studio and online meetings. So this is the result of a very long discussion and trial and error. So what you are going to read about here in the code blog is about attributes and fields, and it's the new attribute, or it's part of the new attribute workflow in Blender. If you use geometry nodes in Blender 292 and 293, you may have a feeling that it works slightly different than shaders and compositing nodes, right? It's not only it affects geometry, but also the flow of data. You have to, whatever you want to operate on an attribute in a mesh, you have to have a geometry input, and the values are all attached to that geometry, and you have to sometimes make a chain of many nodes in order to operate, to maybe even make some simple math on an attribute, on a specific attribute. That it can be a very slow, and it's very clear what you're doing, but it can be very slow. the new system that is presented here, it's still under development. There is a branch and a blend file that you can try here at the very bottom here, where you can try it yourself. But overall, the system, if you're familiar with shading nodes, compositing nodes, it's pretty similar. Although it sounds weird because it's geometry, it's actually pretty similar in a way. A lot of the things that you would expect from a node system, like a Blender node system, are here. More like automatic, under the hood magic that happens. For example, if you have a noise texture in the geometry nodes and you plug it to the position of a geometry, for example, this noise texture is going to change the position attributes or like the placement of your vertices. So suddenly this noise attribute, which is actually what you would expect, right? You add noise to position, boom, you get random positions in your vertices. However, there's a lot of assumptions going on there, right? You have to, like, Blender assumes that you wanted like this texture to affect the position and to have as a original value the position of your mesh. You know what I mean? If you don't, let's go here. I'm gonna go quickly through this because there's a whole blog post and we already talked about this at length. Maybe we can make a special with the Dalai, now that I'm actually going back to, well, I'm actually working at the studio. Last week was my very first week to be full-time at the studio, except Mondays because I still have my camera, my setup here. I have to buy a new gear for the studio. But the blog post is very self-explanatory. There is even all the links to the discussions of previous attempts and what are the pros and cons of each one. And here's more or less the two types of workflows that were chosen. One of them is fields, and the other one is expandable geometry socket. In this blog post, we focus on fields because that's the chosen one, but you can read more about the other one here. The other one was more of a UI challenge. In the current, if you have used the fields prototype, it's also UI-wise, there is no indicator of anything, pretty much. It works under the hood, but for the user, there is no indicator of when an attribute has been inherited or it depends on some other part of the tree. So if you, I wouldn't say you would get confused because it works under the hood as you would expect it. I think it's from an artist point of view, but it could be more clear. And that's something that the team is going to focus. Actually, tomorrow we have a meeting, or two meetings this week actually, regarding, one of them is regarding the visualization for fields in geometry nodes. If you go a little bit more, you're gonna see the different flows. There is function nodes. This is basically a node that operates on an attribute. So this is more or less the drawing of how things work. Maybe you could have used colors for geometry, for attributes to make it more clear, but there is really not that much of a difference. This geometry, for example, here, all of these nodes are operating in this geometry, but they somehow know when they get back here that it was the previous state of the geometry. So it's a lot of under the hood magic happening. The data flow and the function flow. So this is more of the explanation I just said. This is the data that goes in that direction. And the function flow is kind of a callback because it even though it's taken from here, once it gets to the geometry, it goes back and it like kind of fits itself. There is a prototype here, a video even, that explains this concept really well. There is a bit of confusion I read on the forum somewhere because there is a new node that is shown here that there is a couple new nodes that are the extrude nodes. And those are not available yet in geometry nodes. However, if you look at the video, there you can see how powerful this system can be for modeling, for procedural modeling. So in this case, you have two attributes that are spawned from this node, from the geometry, because when you extrude, you have a face, and you extrude it, you have two main components, the front-facing face and the ones that are built around that, so like the side faces in this case. So yeah, it is actually, once you see it working, it's like, oh, it is extruding, then extruding again, then adding a point distribution. Okay, that's understandable. Then it's using the, here's using some math to multiply the density. So it's just basically controlling the density of the entire distribution of points. However, if you mix it up with like top faces, then you only affect the top faces here. So you at any point you had to have like extract the attribute, or no, this just works. And it's, if you see it like it's easy to use, it's because it is. It's so much easier. The next image, this is the first time I've made a donut. So I took the donut challenge, if you say so. I've never done a donut before. So this is my first attempt with geometry nodes. So this is what I was explaining before, that for example here I have a noise texture and it's applying, it's multiplying on Z. So it's taking the color vector and multiplying it and then using it for point translate. So that's why I can push these vertices up and down. Then, but before that I extrude. So I have this this torus shape that I'm extruding, so I can get this frost over here. I'm taking only the top part, so I'm taking the face normal of the donut. I'm taking those that are facing up, so I'm separating set, and then the as a selection, so I'm only extruding that top part of the donut. Then I apply subdivision, then I translate, so I get the position all wobbly on the top. Then I'm assigning a new material, and I'm gonna assign it to the combined of the top faces and the side faces. So I have the ones on the top and the ones on the side, which give me this side. I could have also not used it and only take the ones on the top, but it looked better when I combined them and I assign the material. Then I also take the top faces and I multiply this value to point distribute a cylinder, which is the sprinkles on here. And if I switch to the other side, I'm basically just taking the ID of each one, which is random for each, which is different for each particle, and I'm using a random float to rotate this point. Then I join it with the original, and that is it. So small walk through this setup. It's really much more fun to use it than to explain it, of course. I hope you guys can try it soon. Go check the blog post. There is a link here at the very bottom to the donut file and the experimental build where you can get it from in the buildbot experimental, and then you choose. We're gonna make it easier to find here, and geometry nodes fields prototypes. In this week, hopefully we're gonna deploy an update to the build bot that is going to make it easier to find other builds of the same type. So yeah, let's get started. Actually, why did I ramble so much about this blog post? It's because it took time. This was ready actually time ago, but it went through some iterations. Really team effort. The other big news of this week regarding announcements is it's not big news that the rendering team are having meetings. That has been happening for a while, but the results of those meetings are always interesting, especially because I bet some of these questions are going to be listed on the at the end of the show. Like every week we get some, but look at the people that are involved. It's Blender, AMD, Facebook. What is that? I know people are going to be, some are going to go mad about what is some companies doing there. Okay, so let's see. These are the nodes of the meetings they have. In this case, there's updates on Cycles X. Main development is still going on. Sergey is working on tile rendering, so a big tile. He actually made a live stream on the Blender Developers YouTube channel today. Before this, the show, he did it, I think it's 2-hour live stream. coding, hardcode coding. If you want to see how Blender is really developed, that's a very interesting, eye-opening experience to see a top developer working on hardcore rendering. Anisotropic SSS is practically ready. Actually, this is old-ish. This was implemented already. AMD, people have been asking about AMD or CUDA support for, or CUDA-like support for Cycles X, and apparently AMD sent the initial code and early drivers for HIP implementation for Cycles X. Even though the code is not available yet, it's gonna be reviewed. So yes, it does not yet support hardware ray tracing, but performance looks promising comparing to CUDA. That is huge news for AMD users. And also it's huge news that Willem, the newly, most recent hire developer that is working on Cycles, on the rendering module, so only on Cycles, is gonna be responsible for the feedback and testing of this. So pretty neat. Also, more patches have been reviewed by Kevin. Facebook has a patch, this is what I just mentioned, about copying of geometry arrays for cases like the alembic procedural. What does that has to do with Facebook? I don't know. Maybe it's for Oculus. They're using for that, for like, it's so cool that they're actually using coding, using Blender, Cycles, coding parts, improving it, and sending the code back to Blender for everybody to enjoy. Then William's work on PMGA, and Kevin's working on OpenSubdiv. That's also something that it comes up every week. The updates on OpenSubdiv support for GPU. As we know, subdivision in Blender currently is only CPU, so this really will be a top performance improvement that it would go really well with the 3.x series performance boost. And also there was some discussion about USD, Hydra, MDL, Material X, etc., like industry standard discussions about about which formats should Blender support or to implement. USD is already on its way, we know, but MDL also could be on its way. NVIDIA is working on that, and Material X could be a good candidate, although MDL, I think the last Material X exports to MDL. So yeah, or it's the other way around. MDL supports. There is a bunch of links here if you want to learn more about it. So that is all. Let's continue with the actual news of this week. What's new in Blender? Let's jump right in. Pablo's not reading. What am I not reading? I have the chat right here. Okay. First of all, before starting, people prefer on the chat, I know it's biased, mainly to have the questions on the same day, which is a pity though for people that are not living on the same side of the planet as we are, or maybe living on like on the east side, that they are much later, so it's probably like sleep time over there. We could also stream on Saturday. Another way to fix it. Okay. Let's get started. That was a song, right? In the early 2000s. Let's get it started. The questions are gonna be on Blender.Today. So before I continue, make sure that you go leave your questions over there. Faster Compression, that's the name of today's live stream. And thanks Damian Winichenko for making the thread and for being part of Blender Cloud and a Blender Development Fund Silver supporter. Nice. It's cool to show off your badges over there. The first update, the first that is big news of this week, it's a faster, it's a new library, as support for a new library, new in Blender, more industry standard library for compressions in Blender. So you know that Blender, you can save your files, but you can also save a compressed version of your files, which basically it's that. It compresses the file when you save and uncompresses it when you load a file. both processes can be super slow. That is one of the, there are many reasons to not use compression, especially if you work in a team and you already have some kind of versioning system implemented separately from Blender. It's not really recommended to compress the files within Blender, and also because it can be very, very slow. This new library, although takes care of some of that burden, you still have the issue that you're compressing files, although if you're working on by yourself in a small team, maybe that's fine. The compression is called the Zstandard or Zstandard zlib. Currently Blender uses zlib for compression, but there are now several more modern algorithms that outperform it in every way. So it is widely supported. There are many benefits, but the ones that call my attention mainly is that saving can be, and is actually now, multi-threaded. So saving can be magnitudes faster when saving big files. On loading though, that is not multi-threaded because it's not easy to predict the access patterns of the loading code when seeking is supported. However, here Lucas mentioned that in the future we may want to look into making this more predictable or disabling seeking from the main Blender file. So when you load the main Blender file, that's not going to be multi-threaded. However, all the libraries, all the whatever comes with it, could be multiple background threads. That would be pretty nice for speeding up the loading of huge files. So yeah, very big news. And the other big news is that this, well, actually, there's not all good news. There are also bad news. One of them is, of course, well, the other good news is that this is not even the best. It's not my final form yet. There are more settings that can be changed right now. The settings are tweaked to get a comparable size of the files compared to the previous Blender or the one we used to have. There could be more options exposed in the future if you're more compression savvy. Is that a thing? That could be a thing to be exposed. But okay, let's go into the bad news. What are the bad news? Well, because this is a new algorithm for compressing files, if you save a file now compressed in Blender 3.0 alpha, it's not going to be possible to open it in older Blenders, in 2.9, 2.8, 7, 6, whatever. It's understandable, right? It's using a new library to compress the files, so there's no way the old Blender can know how to read that, you know. It's like a message from the future, if you will. Of course, there's no way to avoid this. So yeah, if you know that you're gonna need to open a file in the past with older Blender files, or in the past if you time travel with a sticky, a thumb drive stick, I don't know, a USB drive, then make sure that you don't save with compression, and then you take the file to this other Blender. Okay, time to ban people from the chat. It's just some spam. Asking the same question 5,000 times only gets you banned from places. How is that ever? Who ever replied to someone asking something like 10 times? I was taught that from when I was a kid. My mom would not give me a look if I asked for something a million times. So I'm gonna be like my mom and continue seeing other Blender news, because that's what she does on Mondays, of course. The other big news, but not big news, but good news from aftermath news from the use of the new standard is that it can also be used for other stuff, like sequencer cache, for example, or any kind of caching. We could use that, right? Maybe. Okay, turn on slow mode. Can I turn on slow mode during the live stream? I don't think I can. I don't have the powers or the closed captions, disable recording. No, I don't think I can turn on slow mode. So we're gonna have fast mode for the time being. Let's continue with the actual news. That was just one topic, the C compression. Let's talk about, actually all the other sections have like 1 or 2 features, so this is gonna be the potpourri show today. We have one new feature in Grease Pencil with cheese, which is very handy. You know, when you convert an object to Grease Pencil, this feature has been around for only a couple releases, as far as I can remember. So there is an option now that, is it an option now, or it's just, or just works? Basically, when you convert an object to a Grease Pencil, you used to miss, or yeah, all the vertex groups got deleted. So yeah, now your object, your mesh object is now a Grease Pencil, but no vertex groups, until Henrik added it just a few days ago. So is this an option or not? Let's look at the code to see if it's even, yeah, use V groups, use faces. So it looks like an option. I usually just scroll to the section where the RNA is. No, there is not. Oh yeah, there is. Here, object add is an argument. So I guess there is. Or not. No, because it should be an RNA entry, right? Or at least in operator setting. So maybe it's not. Why wouldn't you want to have the vertex groups copied? Maybe you can just delete it later. Next, the other improvement in a different topic of the week is a new node. So new node alert. It's time for you to write the noodle emoji, because there is a new node in town. However, you already know this one. It's the color, good old color mix node. This time for geometry nodes. Yeah, this is a really old node. This has been on Blender Compositor since 2.4. Yes, since Elephant Stream, so 2.4. Then in shading nodes, and now it's part of geometry nodes. So welcome to the family. Then quickly let's change into the user interface update. So this one is a fix actually that is gonna make weight painting a lot easier or more readable. Basically, it didn't really work as expected. Why? Because the weight paint overlay, so the blue red colors overlay, was multiplying on top of your meshes. So if the underlying mesh or texture or material was too dark, it will be unreadable. You couldn't read. So I think in the blog post, no, in the report, there should be here. There you go. So if you had this as a mesh and then you enabled weight paint, it was multiplied. So you couldn't see the weight of vertices here. That's not what you would expect when you want to fiddle with weight in your vertices. This is what you would expect, and this is how it looks at the moment. So you have the pure color. This been annoying riggers all over the globe. So super neat. Let's see what else is new. Oh, there's actually it's new, but also it's old, and it's gonna, no one is gonna miss it. I think it's the option, maybe you had never even seen it, in or under user preferences, font style. There was a setting called unfitted kerning style. So it basically made it so the text spacing was all wrong, basically. It's a legacy option. Some time ago, it would fix some fonts in some cases, but in this, yeah, it's no longer used. So it has been removed to make things a little bit, yeah, cleaner. That's a part of a refactor that also makes loading the fonts much faster. So if you ever previewed fonts on Blender, you would have noticed that it takes forever. Yeah, basically there was a lot of 16,000 function calls for what? For depending on the function, on the size of the functions. In this case, for example, the update on my old machine, Harley said that the with a scale set to 1 and set tiny. I can delete my local thumbnail, open file browser, full screen. It creates 350 font previews. Okay. And in 2.93, it used to take 20.4 seconds. And with this patch, it takes half a second. So we can talk about instant previews for file browser on an old machine even. I don't know if this is even multi-thread. Can you multi-thread this? You probably can, right? Even then, it's super fast. So thank you, Harley, for working on it. And so many other fixes. I'm gonna pester you soon, by the way, with some of the UI updates I have on my list for Blender 3. Hopefully soon. You know, this is the potpourri section. UDIM users, UDIM, UDIM. Blender now supports UDIMs that do not start at 1001. Yay. That was a kind of hard-coded value that was unnecessary to have because Blender is already capable of handling sparse tile sets, non-contiguous, so not the ones that are one after the other. Yeah, there is a here, for example, what would happen if you had tiles that were not contiguous? Well, this would happen. You would have a bunch of pink on your character. So unless your character is pink on purpose, you wouldn't like this. Not anymore. Now with this patch, you can have empty tiles all over the place. And now this should work. So yay for that. Super welcome. So dead pin, not dead at all. Thank you, Jesse. Jurkovic. Eric here gives you a big thank you. And a long yay, Varona, and Pops says capital cool. And yeah, people are very happy about it. So yay for that. You're making people happy, Jesse. The next improvement is related. This is the potpourri section series, and this is even the last update of this week. This is just a funny comment that I saw. Blender is now actually lighter. How much lighter? Well, 700 kilobytes, almost 800 kilobytes lighter. There has been some cleanup, some deduplication in the code for, well, the code that Blender generates internally. And yeah, no, it was just funny that Blender is now almost a kilobyte, almost 800 kilobytes lighter. So yay. Of course, this is gonna go up at some point. We have new libraries coming every now and then, or the libraries get updated and they increase. So yay, why not? You know, every time we make Blender lighter, it means that people are gonna spend less time downloading, which the server is less use, less meters, less heating in the atmosphere, hopefully helping. So that's the same with rendering. Every time you speed up render time, it's better for the environment. So yay for improvements. Speaking of improvement, let's talk about the branch, the only one branch I mentioned in this show, which is Cycles X, because we know that Cycles X is gonna be part of Blender eventually, hopefully for 3.0. I think 3.0 is sealed at the moment, at least the basics, or the basic support for most hardware that is supported at the moment. So what is new this week? Well, there is a new algorithm for anisotropic random walk. Christoph Harry here implemented a paper it's based on a paper called Path Trace Subsurface Scattering using anisotropic phase functions and non-exponential free lights. What does it mean? Well, not really sure, but the fact that it's written by Pixar and it just looks great, that's already enough for me. This is awesome. The fact that Pixar is releasing this stuff, it's amazing. I think the future of Blender, like right now, okay, how much is the Blender development fund? We have 140 something, 44. If there was a billionaire, I would come and say, here, how is everything? Here's a billion. It would be amazing if Blender could push this kind of research, you know, having like actual, you know, scientists researchers just working on discovering crazy algorithms and stuff to put out to the world, and everybody can benefit. That would be amazing. And it would be open source from day one, so, or developed in the open. That could be awesome. The next improvement on Blender cycles, well, actually you can read more about it here. There are some, I don't think there is some render, or the render examples are mainly about development. In the patch itself, you can see that has been around for a couple of months, a month actually, and there are some tests, but couldn't find one that says, okay, this is the big difference. Basically ray traced, it's not approximate anymore. Here we have a little introduction. With the recent move to path tracing for both surface and volume rendering, subsurface scattering has been one of the last light transport modes to rely on empirical or approximate models. Isn't that great? Okay, let's go. Next improvement in Cycles X. From the user perspective, you're not gonna find much of a difference or at all. But have you ever noticed that when you finish rendering, the image takes a little bit to show up? Like you finish render and then blam, appears. Well, that is because the image, the final still has to be moved from places, basically. So right now, that has been changed in Cycles X, so it's gonna use the display path directly, so that should be much more immediate. How much faster? Well, depends, I guess, on how many passes you have, or not even, because it's using the display path. So yeah, much faster showing your render once you finish it. And last but not least, this is just good news. I just like to see this kind of commits, you know, like the abstract new GPU kernels to be less good as specific. That's always good, you know, less one vendor specific and more like everybody, everything. Also to be prepared for HIP and hopefully other devices in the future. Okay, that is all for this week in terms of updates. I think it's time to go and check out the questions. I'm gonna close all of this, give some RAM to my computer, and close, refresh, open, and switch seats there. Okay, how's the chat, by the way, before I even start? Man, and this program is free. Yes. Pay the development. What is it? Pay the development team. Yes, the development team is paid. And also the non-developers that also help Blender are also paid. I am paid. I'm not a developer, but I try to help. Tons, well, no, Ton is a developer, but it's not like writing code at the moment. It's mainly behind the ideas and big picture, but also gets paid. There's a lot of non-paid stuff. Accounting, for example. Okay, non-developers paid. The next here, 16 comments. I think we can. No, we cannot. Let's go. First question by Blair Allen. Hi, Pablo. I have outlined how the fields branch could implement the new physics solver quite easily and naturally using attributes. Perhaps you, Jack, and Delay may want to look at this. The particular proposal is in one of my replies near the end of the following post. Anyone who is interested in simulation solvers for Blender 3 may also want to read the whole thing and comment. It's too long to look at on air, but it's worth your time later. Posted a week ago, edited 4 minutes ago, and too long didn't read. Like many others have proposed, you would like to see the extended position-based dynamics be chosen as the replacements for the bullet physics library. Okay, that's a big one. I'll pass it to the team. However, you know that you can talk to the team anytime. You can, well, here you have I think this is too old to comment. this post. Yes, we closed. There was also too much spam. So now the posts after 45 days, they're closed, but you're free to open a thread on DevTalk if you want to continue talking. However, there is a recent fields related blog post. So I urge you to post that link here. If you haven't already, please do so, because this is what the developers are actually looking at. And also remember that if you want to be involved as a more technical and you want to give feedback and not troll too much, you're also welcome in the chat channels on Blender.chat. There is a nodes, geometry nodes module channel where you can talk about, you can present your ideas. However, that's more for development. If you want to be more of a user, go into the channel called Everything Nodes. So yeah, gonna keep the tab open, but make sure you mention that in the blog post. Hi Pablo, I was thinking of this. Can we have a short animation or GIF for Blender sculpting brushes, which shows how the brush works? Shows like Photoshop's shows how the brushes work. I don't know how Photoshop does it, but is it like a big tooltip? I think Blender should have some more expanded tooltips. There were even some patches going around some years ago about having like an extended tooltip. So you mouse over, you have a tooltip, you leave the mouse over longer, or maybe click on like read more, and you could see, or a shortcut, and then you could see more information and link to the wiki and all of that. No wiki, the manual. So yeah. The other, no, that's it. And the next question actually is by Pipeliner. Hey Pablo, why don't you promote that you have the Blender channel on ODZ too? For everyone here, ODZ is an alternative without advertisement. Wait, you should not, in these channels, you should not see any advertisement. Blender YouTube channel doesn't have monetization turned on, which is maybe why these videos don't get as many views as other videos that do basically the same. So maybe that's the answer. However, Blender does not have advertisement yet. However, we did receive a link, an email news that at some point YouTube may add advertisement to videos, even they are not monetized, unfortunately. I don't know if that's even true or when it's going to happen, but yeah. ODC, we have a channel, and unfortunately we couldn't get the first one for some reason, but yeah, we have a channel, and this gets mirrored there automatically. I connected the YouTube channel to the ODC channel, and they get updated right after this, uploaded after this. So it is official. Maybe I should add it to here, to the Blender official channels. Next, Slug Nugget says, "Hi Pablo, how come I think of many things to ask you throughout the week, but once Monday rolls around, I forget everything I ever had?" Because you should write things down. You should write it in your dreams even. If you are just half awake, half asleep, just write it down on a piece of paper. Have always, next to your bed, have always a bottle of water and a little notebook with a pen. The best way is to write down those and have a reminder. Every week it's at the same time, this live stream, so you can set a reminder. GGSAG23 says, "Hola Pablo, I have a question regarding the shrink wrap modifier. Would it be hard for the developer of the shrink wrap modifier to implement the option to use a curve as target geometry?" A curve as target geometry. Well, that's I think we're getting in the territory of geometry nodes here. Using geometry nodes, I managed to wire up a little workaround which fakes the object to a mesh with the object info node, and then creates an actual mesh with curve to mesh node, a very thin tube to create the normal on which the shrink wrap modifier and can then snap a vertex group. See the image How do I add an image to post? Yeah, it's not possible yet on comments. You have to use another service. You can use pasteall.org. That's a website we made with Francesco, so it's in the Blender family in a way of people. So yeah, go to /pick or click on the corner and you can upload, and this is gonna be kept for 5 months or so and then gonna go away. And then you can link it here. Muchas gracias. El próximo lunes. Why próximo? If you speak Spanish, you should hang out for the Spanish version of Blender.Today, which I do right after the live stream. So let's see. Next. Oh yeah, by the way, the question is, yeah, I think this is more geometry nodes. In the future, when more modifiers get replaced with geometry nodes, this could be part of it. The same as an extended array and so much more. While I'm at it, is there a possibility to add that Blender Eevee gets a proper real-time hardware anti-aliasing? This is currently the only thing that keeps us from using Blender in live model presentations in our design studio. The image that Eevee generates looks really great, but it only anti-aliases when the model viewport is not moving, meaning that the motion while turning the model, it looks pretty ugly due to the missing AI and anti-aliasing. Not sure how exactly this is achieved in other tools, but graphics cards can definitely do this in many years. Yep, I have no idea how it's currently done. You know, in Blender now you have a compositing anti-aliasing. Maybe that can be a workaround for the time being, but yeah. Next. Are you guys talking in the chat? Love your voice. Thank you. I hate my voice. It's not really a big fan. If you go to ODC, I doubt you will be able to read the chat and participate, which is half of the fun. Yeah, the chat is not, it's only, I don't think it gets taken, like goes over to ODC. Mille Porte, bevel after boolean. Hi Pablo, apply a bevel a bevel after a boolean operations leads to this mess. This issue is the strongest limitation in design and prevents a real non-destruction workflow. When and if this problem will be resolved? Have you reported this issue? I mean, you seem to be very familiar with it, but have you reported like this file in the tracker? Because there has been so many improvements in those modifiers, bevel and boolean operations in the last few months even. So yeah, I would if you have this file, just post it on the as a bug report, and this should be tackled. It's him. I think they're replying to themselves. Andre Kling says, hello, Pablo. Okay, I have 6:05. Let's do 5 more questions because it's 6:05. Hello, Pablo. I have a question. I was watching the quick start tutorial on the RenderMan for Blender, and one of the things that an artist mentioned is the use of ACES as oh no, that sounds really bad. Jesus, why would I? ACES as color management, ACES. Is there a plan to implement ACES in Blender in an easier way than the current one? Not as far as I know at the time being, but it should be eventually. I mean, there are branches, there are add-ons that you can use, and you might lose like the backwards compatibility, but it should be, it is possible already, but not in a default easier way. As far as I know, maybe it's a discussion I'm missing, but no. Carrapaz says, will Blender, question 4, have performance advantages using Julia language in some areas like add-on? Julia language. Enlighten me. The Julia programming language. It's a language that is fast, dynamic, easy to use, and open source. Everybody says that. Click to learn more. However, when was it? Is it what kind of? I have never seen it. Sorry, I'm ignorant. But I haven't seen anything done in Blender like this, or even adding other type of programming. Right now in Blender you can only do Python and open shading language and GLSL, but not really other. Maybe if some new programming languages could be added, it should be more of a open, right? Like have a wider standard, not just the one language, but maybe make some kind of interpreter for many other languages. Hi Pablo, I would love to know if this bug will be resolved in the near future, or is it a bug on the part of NVIDIA? Usually NVIDIA is really fast in fixing issues. Optics kernels not loading. This has been assigned, not yet. This was published on June. When running on viewport, and it's definitely throughout troubleshooting. Have you tried Cycles X? Because the kernel loading is different in Cycles X. This even doesn't even happen. Doesn't take that long in Cycles X. So maybe try it there. Like download the. Well, there's people here even replying and saying what the driver version they're using, and I think the present behavior is expected. So if it's just the loading that it takes time, try Cycles X, the branch that is available on builder.blender.org, experimental Cycles X, because the loading of optics kernels is different there. It's super fast. Question that was 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Oh, and the button is there. So, hello Pablo. Any news about texture painting or baking improvement? For example, scene brush size for painting or multi-bake. Also, I hope developers will not reject or of concept of active object. Reject of concept. Any news on this area? And what about the new knife project? It became less handy with multi-to-multi, and it is almost never used in real life. We need much easier concept like active cuts all selected. What do you think about it? Okay, this is a bunch of questions. Let me go one by one. This is the last one too. So any news about texture painting or baking improvement? Not as far as I know. For example, scene brush size for painting or multi-bake. No, that I know. If you know any patches here in the chat, then also I hope developers will not reject the concept of active object. No, why would they? Active object is the best. It's what keeps Blender afloat. Today, any news on this area? And what about the new knife project? Well, do you have the Summer of Code updates regarding the knife project? You can follow the dev talk, and there should be a blog post regarding Summer of Code projects this week and the coming weeks. So wow, there is even a continued development on adaptive cloth simulator here 3 minutes ago. Then there should be one for the knife here, knife tool improvements 5 hours ago. And there has been the thread was opened by the developer, and you can follow here what is the status. I haven't been following it myself, but it's cool to see the community and the developers involved in it, like in the chat and following and making videos and demos. This is the best thing you can do if you want to support development. And yeah, this is the best, just giving feedback and using stuff. Okay, time to wrap it up. It's 6:10, so I think I'm gonna call it. Okay, it's actually super sun. You can't see anything here. Summer is coming to the Netherlands, I heard. Eventually it's gonna come at some point. How about we do this again next week? How was it, the show, for you? I made a poll again at the beginning of the show about if people prefer the questions to be made on the same day or a week ahead talked about it at the beginning of the show. The poll right now sits at 58% for people wanting to have the questions on the thread made on the same day, against 42% on a week ahead. So for the time being, we're gonna keep it the same way. Let me know in the comments below, especially if you're watching this after the show has been live. Let me know what you think, and give it a thumbs up to the comment that if someone is saying, hey, no, I prefer a week ahead, so also to get a better idea. I hope you had fun today. I did, and even though we didn't have a lot of new features, developers, it's also summer in some places. Not here, but in some places it is summer, so it's holidays time. Developers are taking a much deserved break before the madness of the second half of the year starts. You know, we have Blender 3 coming out this year, so it's good that developers take some rest, some time to chill before the madness, which we're gonna be talking about here every week, like always we do. We've been doing it for 4 years or something like that. If you speak Espanol, I'm gonna be making this same live stream over at the channel that I usually mention, Blender Hoy. Other than that, let's do this again, same place, same time, for another show of Blender Today live. Watch out your headphones. It's not that I give you a lot of time to think about about lowering the volume. See you next week. Same place, same time.